take this opportunity to welcome you to today's press briefing, which is intended to highlight the fact that the President has actually signed the Anti-Homosexuality Law. And I want to confirm to you that what was a bill is now an act of Parliament called the Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023. It was assented to by the President and forwarded to Parliament. So what I have with me here is the assented to copy of the Anti-Homosexuality Law. First of all, I want to congratulate the people of Uganda, to congratulate Parliament of Uganda, to congratulate the Speaker of Parliament, to congratulate the President of the Republic of Uganda, and all stakeholders who have been involved in these processes. We want to particularly thank the Speaker for giving me and my colleagues a platform to present this bill before Parliament. I want to thank my colleagues on the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. I want to thank all the stakeholders, people who came to the committee to give their views. The bill was enriched by views from various stakeholders. So I want to thank them. And I think particularly you, the media, for highlighting various aspects in this bill. Now, I want to begin with make a few highlights of what this bill is about. And I say so because there has been deliberate, I call it deliberate distortion and misinformation about this bill. And now that it is an act, I, as the mover, I have an obligation to clarify and highlight various aspects in this bill. The first aspect I need to highlight is that this bill defines what we call homosexuality. And briefly it says same-sex acts. And when you read the bill, if you perform a sexual act with a person of the same sex, then you have committed the offense of homosexuality. And what is the punishment? Imprisonment for life. And what does imprisonment for life mean? It actually means imprisonment for the natural life, your natural life. So the first aspect in this bill is to define what we now call the offense of homosexuality. The second aspect relates to what we call aggravated homosexuality. And what does aggravated homosexuality mean? It basically means engaging in a sexual act with the following categories of people. Number one, a minor. Number two, a person of advanced age. And who is a person of advanced age? 75 years and above. Number three, when you commit a homosexual act with and you're a parent or guardian of a child, you have committed aggravated homosexuality. When you commit an act of homosexuality with a person who is disabled, you are taking advantage of disability. A person who is unconscious, you are a person in authority, and you are engaging in homosexual acts with those you lead. You can be an employer, and you are taking advantage of employer-employee relationships. Then you have committed what we call aggravated homosexuality. When you carry out acts of homosexuality through force or duress or undue influence, then the law defines that as aggravated homosexuality. And what is the punishment? The maximum punishment is death. So when you commit aggravated homosexuality, the law says you shall be liable to suffer death. And I want to clarify. Some time back, you saw a document by the Deputy Attorney General saying that this law creates mandatory death penalty. It is not true. What the law creates is a maximum sentence. Therefore, the courts can decide not to impose the maximum sentence of death. And again, for clarification, nowhere in our laws is it indicated that we have no death penalty. Because people want to create an impression that this is the first piece of legislation in Uganda that talks about death penalty. It is not. It is not the first, neither will it be the last. And I'll give examples. Look at murder. When you commit the offense of murder, what is the maximum sentence? It is death. Look at terrorism. Under the Anti-Terrorism Act, what is the maximum sentence? It is actually death. So, the death penalty was never outlawed because there is also that misconception. What the Constitutional Court said in the Kigula case is that it is not mandatory. So Parliament cannot create death sentence as a mandatory sentence because then you take away the latitude of the courts to exercise the discretion. So I thought I would also make that very clear to avoid the other distortion I was talking about. The other highlight in this bill creates what we call child offenders. Now, child offenders don't suffer the same penalties like adult offenders. Under this law, when a child offender, when somebody is convicted of acts of homosexuality, the maximum sentence is 3 years. 3 years. So for them, they cannot suffer death. They cannot go for imprisonment for life. The other important aspect in this law is the aspect of compensation. Again, where somebody is convicted of acts of homosexuality, the court can order for compensation to the victim. And I think this is also another development in the law, which does not exist anywhere. It's also important for us to highlight the issue of consent. Under this law, consent is not a defense. You cannot, for example, argue that X, who is an adult, consented with Y. Why are you bothered? The law is saying that the fact that you have consented is in itself not a defense. So I thought that should also be highlighted. Now, there's also the aspect of confidentiality. And this aspect of confidentiality under the law is what some people are confusing with undermining media freedom. And I'll talk about that later. What does the clause on confidentiality say? That the media or anybody is not supposed to publish the identity of a victim without their consent. And is it unique to this piece of legislation? No. So the media or anybody in public space, the law criminalizes anything to do with disclosing, publishing the identity of a victim without his or her consent or without authorization of the court. That is what Clause 7 of this bill, now Act, is talking about. The other aspect, which is a subject of distortion, relates to premises. Premises. Now, what does the law say on premises? The law says, if you knowingly, and I want us to be very clear, if you knowingly avail or make available your premises for acts of homosexuality, you commit an offense under this act. So the operational word here is knowingly. Now the question is, how do I get to know? It's a question of evidence. You could be told. You could be told. If a group of people come to you and openly tell you, we are going to engage in these acts, then you have known. So if you avail the premises, then definitely you are breaching this law. Number two, you could see. You can observe. Optical observation. then obviously circumstances, because in law we even talk about circumstantial evidence. So it's also important to highlight this because it is one of those things that has been a subject of distortion. So the operational word on the premises is knowingly. So I thought that should also be highlighted. Now, there is the aspect of promotion. When you look at Section 11 of this Act, it defines what we mean by promotion. Now, promotion is an offense under this law. And the law explains various incidents that amount to promotion. Knowingly advertising, knowingly publicizing, financing, and all those aspects amount to promotion. And once you engage in any of those acts that amount to promotion, then you are breaching or committing an offense. Now, if you are a legal entity, you are a media organization that is carrying out the promotion, you are a non-government organization that is carrying out the promotion, then you will be fined. And the law talks about 50,000 currency points. And the currency point, as you are aware, is 20,000 shillings. So, you need to understand where you draw the line. Aspects of promotion are in effect outlawed under this law. Then there's also the other aspect of failure to report acts of homosexuality. Now, failure to report acts of homosexuality is limited to two incidents. One, if you get to know that a child has been a victim of homosexuality and you don't report, or if you get to know that a vulnerable person has been a victim of homosexuality and you don't report, you commit an offense. So failure to report is only limited to two categories of people, where a child is a victim or where a vulnerable person is a victim. And again, the law explains who a vulnerable person is. And the law also mentions who a child is. So I thought it would be important for us to understand that. Now, are these provisions in this law unique to this law? No. I have already explained that under the Anti-Terrorism Act in Uganda, there is death penalty. Under the Penal Code Act, there is death penalty. So is this anti-homosexuality law bringing a new form of penalty? No. It has been there, it will be there. Number two, on the aspect of disclosure. Because you see, somebody was on TV this morning and talking about criminalizing the media and the media. Understand it from this context. There is none of your media houses that can promote terrorism. None of you. And I want anybody to say, for us, we are free to promote terrorism. Because it is an offense. So once an act has been described as an offense, you lose the freedom to promote it. And that's basic criminal law. It's basic criminal law. You cannot, for example, run adverts calling upon people to engage in theft. Why? Because theft is a crime. You cannot engage in acts calling on people to engage in murder. Why? Because murder is a crime. So once Parliament designates an act as a crime, you lose the freedom to promote it. I think it's also important to put that into context. Finally, has the penal code been touched? Because again, there is some pedestrian pastor whom I saw on TV this morning, very pedestrian. Section 145 of the Penal Code Act is intact, very intact. It is not in any way related to this law because they deal with different things. Because this pedestrian pastor was saying, once this law, you will go to court, it will be challenged, and even if it is challenged, the Penal Code Act is intact. So I thought I would also put that into context for people to understand. Now, having said that, what then is the way forward? No, let me first begin with the consequences of these actions. Number one, as I've highlighted in various fora, our colleagues in the Western world have indicated and actually actualized their threats. Visas have been cancelled. As I speak now, the Speaker's visas have been cancelled for America the other day, and this is also confirmed. This is email from US Embassy. And dear Madam Speaker, the United States government has revoked your current visas on information that came available after your last issuance. As of May 12, 2023, you don't possess a valid travel visa to the US, though you are welcome to apply again. Please forward your passport to the embassy through Ministry of Finance so that we can make necessary modifications to your visas. I think they were looking for my visa for the US, they didn't find it. So the first victim is the Speaker. And I understand even the UK government is doing the same. Now, first of all, you will cancel all our visas. And by the way, you are right. For me, I have no problem with the way a country manages their affairs. If in their wisdom and democracy, they don't want us in their countries, it is their right. And I don't want anybody to blame America or UK for cancelling visas for this time. It is their right. And me, I will not complain. I will not begrudge any embassy for cancelling anybody's visas. So what that means is that my only problem with these people is single picking. This law here was signed by the President of the Republic of Uganda. May I invite America, Canada, Britain, the entire European Union, to also cancel the visas of Mr. Museveni. May I also invite them to cancel visas of all MPs except two. Except two. Let all MPs' visas be cancelled. Let there be a travel ban, not only on Vasalirwa and Anita Among, Right Honorable. Let all of us be subjected. In fact, let all Ugandans be denied visas to America, Canada, and the European Union. Let all Ugandans. Why? Because this has been the most bipartisan bill in the history of this country. The most bipartisan. So why pick out Vasalirwa? Why pick out Speaker Anita Among? Why? Cancel all our visas. But is this shocking? No. It was actually expected. I personally spoke to the Honorable Bahati. Honorable Bahati told me that after he had championed this bill in the previous parliament, he could not even get space where to sleep in the US. Booking space, a hotel to sleep, was a challenge. So the first consequence is that people with American visas and the European Union and the others, their visas either will be cancelled or have been cancelled. And that means don't waste your time applying for a visa to any of those countries. I cannot, for example, apply for a visa to the US. Fortunately, I was last in the US in 2009. I had not even become MP. I have never gone back. So this is a call to the MPs and all Ugandans that expect travel bans, expect visa restrictions. But my challenge to the Western world is that don't single out individuals. Do it to all of us. Then we will know that you are fair. Number two, I was speaking to my colleagues in Ghana. In Ghana, they've even gone ahead to threaten freezing accounts. Freezing accounts. And slapping bans on international banking institutions that partner with the US banks and other financial institutions. So if you have monies on your account and you have a salary, remove it. Remove it. Because you are likely to be a victim. Number three, aid cuts and controls. That they have mentioned. They are going to cut aid in Uganda, and perhaps that is likely to affect many aspects of our budgets. Either they will be completely cut or they will be restricted. That is also another probable consequence. Finally, jamming communication systems is another consequence. I told you how advocates of these acts have already written to Twitter and these others to have me deregistered. And it's with now passing of this law, they now have a stronger case. So what is likely to happen is that some of us will go back to the traditional mode of communication. If I want you, I have to look for you physically because of this. Now, what is my advice to the country? First of all, I want to advise as follows. On the side of government, let us now consider looking for development partners. And I am ready to champion the cause of going to the Arab world to look for donor support. The Arab world, we will go to Saudi Arabia, we will go to Kuwait, we will go to Qatar, we will go to UAE, and this deficit, which will be occasioned by these cuts, can easily be replaced. So let's re-engage. If we've not been thinking about the Middle East, and particularly the Arab world, where they respect morals and values, let us go there. And I want to invite government to seriously consider us going to the Arab world for donor support. Number two, to advise my colleagues with families and businesses to reconsider shifting them, because they are likely to be victims. So if you have families in the UK, in the European Union, in the US, in Canada, this is the time to reconsider shifting them. Because time will come when you will no longer have visas. You will not go to visit them. You will not go to check on your businesses. So those who have them, this is really the time to consider seriously relocating them. Number three, frugality. Frugality. Now that aid has been cut or is going to be cut, it is important that we are frugal. When you look at these budgets of ours that we have just passed, and these bogus allocations to State House, President's office, these convoys we are having, the big cars, the fuel gasolers, it is now time that we become frugal. So that monies that could be spent on unnecessary aspects or sectors is redirected to go to health, to go to education, and other sectors that have been funded by the Western world. And I'm very sure if we adopt frugality, we will have monies available to meet the deficits that would have been occasioned by these budgetary cuts. And I only hope and pray that our colleagues in government take that aspect. Finally, on the way forward, to call upon the President, the Speaker of Parliament, the MPs to stand our ground. We have no choice but to stand our ground. Otherwise, if we don't stand our ground, this is what is going to happen. Next time, they will bring another condition on our laws. Don't pass this law. If you do so, then X, Y, and Z is likely to happen. So if we don't stand our ground as a country, as a people, as a community, then we will completely have seceded our sovereignty and independence as a country. I want to advise our colleagues, especially in the Western world, that let's respect each other. We could have taken on a path of pretense. You imagine a situation where we say, please, for the sake of aid, let's sign this bill. And we pretend as if we like it, when deep inside our hearts, it's not really what we want. But we have chosen not to do so. And I am trying to seek appointments with the diplomats in this country. I want to ask them, how do they treat their own people? Because it is actually not true that everybody in the Western world supports homosexuality. It is not true. I am aware, for example, in America, annually, the states seek to pass legislation to outlaw homosexuality. They are only defeated at the level of the federal government in Washington. I know it. So what happens to their own citizens who are opposed to this? What happens to them? What happens to them? So I think the aspect of mutual respect is really needed, and we should really be taking that stand. So colleagues, I thought I would make those highlights as we celebrate today, which as far as I'm concerned is a very important day in the history of legislation in this country. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Okay. Basebo ne banyabo, njagala kutegeeza eggwanga mu butongole nti omukulembeze w'eggwanga yassiza omukono ku tteeka eriwera ebisiyaga mu Uganda. Era etteeka lye lino nange ng'eyalireeta naweereddwa omukisa okufunako kopi ku tteeka lino. Era kaakati okutandika leero ensonga ezikwatagana ku bisiyaga n'okubiwera zirambikiddwa mu tteeka. N'olwekyo njagala kuyozaayoza bannayuganda, kuyozaayoza ababaka ba paalamenti, kuyozaayoza sipiika wa paalamenti, Right Honorable Anita Among Magogo, ne pulezidenti w'eggwanga Yoweri Kaguta Museveni olw'okubeera nti etteeka lino yalitaddeko omukono. Njagala kutwala mukisa guno etteeka kwogerako ku nsonga ntontono nnyo enkulu eziri mu tteeka lino. Ekisooka, etteeka lino linya musango ogw'okulya ebisiyaga. Era lirambika nti omuntu yenna abeera mu kikolwa eky'ebisiyaga n'omuntu ow'ekikula nga kye kimu aba azizza omusango gw'okulya ebisiyaga, era bwe gumuka mu vvi aba asibibwa obulamu bwe bwonna. Ekyokubiri, waliwo ekyefaananyiriza ku ekyo tukiyita aggravated homosexuality, nti omuntu yenna akola ekikolwa eky'ekisiyaga ng'akikoze n'omwana, n'omuntu omukadde, n'omuntu aliko obulemu ku mubiri gwe oba mu bwongo, oba omuntu oyo oba nga mwana muto, oba nga oli muntu wa buvunaanyizibwa, okikola ku bantu b'otwala, oba ozizza omusango, era bwe gukuka mu vvi oyinza okutwalibwa ku kalabba. Ensonga ey'okusatu nti mu tteeka lino omwana omuto bw'avunaanwa ate ye ekibonerezo kya kusibibwa emyaka 3 nga kye kibonerezo ekya waggulu. Ekyokuna, mulimu akawaayiro akagamba nti bw'oba osingiddwa omusango guno, kooti esobola okulagira nti gwe omusango gwe gusinze oliyirire oyo yenna gwe watuusaako ekikolwa kino. Ensonga endala ya kuuma byama. Kimenya amateeka mu tteeka lino okumanya nti omuntu oyo yasobezebwako oba yakozesebwa mu kikolwa ky'ebisiyaga n'okyogera nga tofunye lukusa kuva gy'ali oba nga kooti si yekuwadde olukusa. Ensonga endala ya bifo ebyenjawulo ebisulwamu oba ebikozesebwa ng'amahoteri nga lodge. Etteeka lino ligamba nti bw'omanyaako nti omuntu yenna ayagala kukola bisiyaga n'ogenda mu maaso n'owaayo ekifo kyo naye nga wakitegeddeko, ogwo guba musango. So gufuuka ddi omusango nga wakitegeddeko? Okitegeera otya? Ayinza okugamba, oyinza okulaba, oba oyinza okulaba embeera egenda mu maaso. Ekyo njala kukisaako sira kuba abantu babadde babuuza nnyo ebibuuzo bingi ku nsonga eyo. Owaayi, ate nze nyinza okubeera ne hoteri embalala, nze mbeera Kampala, onvunaana otya? Etteeka okusookera ddala etteeka ligamba nti oteekwa kubanga wakitegeddeko nti abantu abazze mu hoteri yo oba mu loogi yo oba ku nnyumba yo bagenda kukola bikolwa bya kisiyaga. Bw'oba tokitegedde oba nga tolina nsonga yonna ekutegeezesebwa oba ekumanyisibwa oba tolina musango. Ensonga endala gye njagala okussaako essira era ebadde ekwata nnyo ku b'amawulire nti etteeka livunaana omuntu yenna atumbula ebisiyaga oba kye tuyita promotion okutumbula etteeka linnyonnyola okutumbula kyeki. Muyinza okubeeramu okuvujjirira essente, okuba obulango, okuba obulango ku rediyo oba ku TV mu mbeera eyeefaananiza mu ebyo. N'olwekyo bw'obanga weenyigidde mu kutumbula ng'oyita ku rediyo, ku TV mu ngeri emenya obuwaayiro bw'etteeka lino, era nabwo oba ozizza musango. N'olwekyo ebyo bye bimu ku bikulu ebiri mu tteeka lino. Naye etteeka lino nga limaze okuyisibwa, era waliwo ebize bibeerawo, naye ate era bye tusuubira okusookera ddala abantu abadde balina visas ez'ogenda e Bulaaya abamu zisaziddwamu, ng'omu ku bo ye Speaker wa Paalamenti, Abangereza bamuwandikidde n'Abamerika ne bamuwandikira nga bamutegeeza nti takyasobola kulinnya mu nsi zaabwe, era bamuweereza ebiwandiiko bibino Abamerika n'Abangereza. Ndowooza n'ensi endala ez'e Bulaaya zijja kikola. Naye naffe ffenna abalala ndowooza nange banoonyeza naye nga balaba sirina visa ya Amerika oba ya Bungereza nga tebalina kyakusazaamu bambi. Naye ekisinga okubeera ekikulu nti ekikolwa kye bakoze kiri mu mateeka gaabwe era sikirinaako buzibu. Naye lwaki balondamu sipiika yekka? Twagala ne Pulezidenti Museveni yataddeko omukono naye visa ze bazisazeemu. Twagala ababaka ba Paalamenti bonna visa zaabwe bazisazeemu. Lwaki balondamu omuntu omu babiri? Kuba etteeka lyawagirwa buli omu. In fact bannayuganda bonna bandibadde bagaanibwa ogenda e Bulaaya kuba ensonga eno bagyagala. N'olwekyo ekyo kikoleddwa olwaleero. Kiba kitegeeza nti abamu ku ffe tetukyazeemu kulinnya mu mawanga ago. Naye nga bwe ŋŋambye nti bino byonna byajja tubisuubira. Ekyokubiri, nafunye okutegeezebwako ku bannange abali e Ghana nti ate bo baasukka nawo bagenda ku akawunti zaabwe eza banka ez'enjawulo ne bateeka n'envumbo ku akawunti zaabwe ez'enjawulo. Bwe njagala okusabira nti abantu abalina akakwate ku tteeka lino ng'olina essente mu banka zijjeeyo, kuba abazungu beetefutefu oziteekako envumbo. Essente muzijjeyo tuddemu okuzitereka mu nkola eri enkadde ey'okuziteeka mu nsuwa, mu byagi ne mu programs endala. Ekyokusatu, already abavujjirizi b'essente abatuwa obuyambi bamaze okuwa amawulire nti bagenda kusalako obuyambi bwe babadde bawa Uganda. Ekyo nakyo tukyetegekere, kigenda kukolebwa kuba bawandiise. Ekyokuna, kutataganya mpuliziganya zaffe abamu, ng'ogenda okuweereza WhatsApp nga tegenda, okuba amasimu nga tegakyakola. Already nze mwennyini kamwa koogera bakitandikako dda. So kitegeeza nti abamu ku ffe tugenda kuddayo ku mpuliziganya ey'enkola eri enkadde nga bwe nkwagala nteekwa kunoonya n'envuga akagaali oba n'envuga emmotoka mu nteekateeka eyo. Naye mu mbeera eno yonna ki ekyandibadde kikolebwa? Njagala kuwabula bwe nti naddala eri gavumenti nti olw'okuba amawanga g'abazungu gasazeewo okusalako obuyambi, tutandike okuteekawo enkolagana ennuŋŋamu n'amawanga g'Abawarabu. Tugende mu Bawarabu tuggyeyo obuyambi. Zino essente ze bagenda okusalako tugende mu Bawarabu tuzibasale bajja kuzituwa. Naddala bwe tubagamba nti ekisazizaako ssente zino lwakuba tulwanyisa ebisiyaga. So tugende mu Bawarabu, ndi mweteefuteefu okubeera mu delegations ezigenda okuperereza Abawarabu batuwe obuyambi, Islamic Development Bank etuwe obuyambi, abo bo basigale n'obuyambi bwabwe ne ssente zaabwe. Ekyokubiri, Bannayuganda abalina families ne businesses e Bulaaya ne mu Amerika ne mu nsi endala, njagala bawa magezi balowooze okuzijjayo okuzitwala mu nsi endala. Kakati wano wekituuse ojja kubeerawo nga takyasobola nagenda kulaba ku famire yo mu Amerika oba Canada oba Bungereza, nga tokyasobola kucekinga ku businesses zo bwe bizzeemu ebya visa. So bandibadde batwala obuvunaanyizibwa ne ebyobugagga byabwe ne families zaabwe ne baziroketinga ne bazitwala mu nsi endala. Ekyokusatu, katono ke kaseera ng'eggwanga okudiibuuda ensimbi y'omuwi w'omusolo tukikomye. Bino bye tubadde tulaba nti State House yafunye buwumbi na buwumbi, President's Office erina buwumbi na buwumbi, konvoyi z'amamotoka, bino byonna tubisale tubikendeeze. Essente ze zibadde zigenda mu bintu ebyo tuzitwale mu byobulamu. Ate tukisobola bwe tuba tusazeewo obuteejalabya n'okukendeeza okuteeka ssente mu bintu ebitatuyamba nnyo ng'eggwanga ne tubiteeka mu byobulamu, bijja kutuyamba nnyo okulaba nga essente bannaffe ze bagenda okutwala nga zizzibwawo. Ensonga esembayo njagala kusaba nga bannayuganda tubeere bagumu. Twasazeewo ng'eggwanga, kye tusazeewo tukinywerereko. Bwe tunaaba tetukikoze, obwetwaze bwaffe tujja kuba tubuwaddeyo. Mwebale nnyo. Ensonga egambibwa nti okuteeka omukono ku tteeka lino kigendereddwamu kutuwuddisa oba kutujja ku mulamwa gw'e Somalia. Okusookera ddala nze sisalawo ddi mukulembeze wa ggwanga lwateeka mukono ku tteeka. N'ekyo njagala okukakasa nti ndi omu mubaka wa Paalamenti juzi eyayimira mu Paalamenti ne neemulugunya nti Paalamenti eyisa amateeka ne galwayo ewa Pulezidenti. So bw'aba yakikoze nga nakyogerako mu Paalamenti, nze ng'eyaleeta etteeka mba musanyufu. Sirowooza nti waliwo okuwuddisibwa kwonna. Etteeka lino bwe twasooka olireeta, abantu baagamba nti twagala kujja abantu ku mulamwa gwa NSSF n'amabaati. Kakati bagamba nti tubajja ku mulamwa gwa Somalia. Somalia twafunye amawulire agagamba nti komanda wa Land Forces yagenzeeyo, nti era waateereddwawo akakiiko okunoonyereza obuzibu bwavudde ku ki. Kakati nga tetunnaba kufuna lipooti, tosobola gamba nti waliwo okuwuddisibwa. Ekyokubiri, tewagenda kubeerawo olunaku mu ggwanga luno nga tewali nsonga ekutte bantu mu babiro. Oba oli awo singa tewabadde Somalia bandigambye twagala kujja abantu ku buligi y'e Katonga. Oba oli awo banditaddewo ekirala. So ekyo nze saagala kukkaanya nabo. Etteeka lyo lyateereddwako omukono era ndowooza nti tugende bugenzi mu maaso nalyo. Kaakati